here today at the Rose Garden. Beautiful garden of roses here in California. And winter's upon us. Today is December 21st, 2016. And the biggest thing about the winter, what I've noticed, is that people love it the most because of the holidays. But one problem that we seem to encounter every winter is the sickness. Why do people get sick around the winter time? Well, if we look at it from a physical standpoint, let's take a look at atoms, right? That's what we're made up of. It seems that they can't move as fast and they can't create as much space between each other when it's cold outside. And so the same thing happens to your body. That's mainly why inflammation happens, is because your cells can't move around enough. And so typically what you're going to do is you're going to inflate. It's going to have to expand. So how do we combat this? Well, the first thing is going outside and getting some air. I mean, most people, you know, when the winter comes around and it starts getting cold outside, the first thing that they want to do is they want to freaking go inside. But the problem with staying inside all the time is the air. Air quality levels have been proven to not be as pure compared to the air outside. And I think that has a lot to do with the trees and nature. I mean, just look around us, you know, outside we're immersed in it. We also have good social interactions. You're usually moving more if you're outside, so that allows your body to pump blood better and better regulate its nutrients and essentially move waste out of the system. So there's no difference really between winter and the summer in terms of people getting sick, except for the weather. And you know, most people want to blame it on like some disease going around, but if you really think that there's like some germ in the air that only comes around like 2 months out of the year, then I've got some news for you, because the science says something much different. But the beautiful thing about that is that means that you're in control of it, meaning that there's ways to combat this type of sickness. The first thing is that you got to get outside. You have to start moving. If you don't start moving, blood is not going to be able to flow to the rest of your body. One, that's important because, I mean, you got to consider that you need blood flow to your brain. That way you can work more properly or more effectively during the winter months in the winter season. The second thing about getting outside is the fresh air. And that's going to be the biggest thing that people miss, because when you're indoors, it's just way too stuffy. And I've always felt like when I'm really sick or I can feel the sickness coming on me, all I have to do is go for a light jog or take a nice stroll around the garden. And it seems to fix everything up just fine for me. So that's going to be my first biggest piece of advice. We're going to focus on two things that are primarily going to affect the way that you feel during the winter. What you put in and what you put out. So pretty simple concept, right? So what you put in and what you put out. You know, given that the cold weather is going to slow you up, it's going to make your cells a little more sticky, and they're not going to be able to work together as nicely. That's what you're going to need to do. So putting out, you know, that's the big thing. That's exercising. One thing that people seem to miss is that they don't sweat on their skin, because it gets so cold. You know, there's not enough heat in the day, especially if you're staying inside a lot. And sweating is really important because, one, it's going to open your pores and the moisture is good for your skin. But second, it's going to allow you to remove excess water or old water through electrolytes through your skin. That's why your skin's really salty, because it excretes a lot of sodium. And the cool thing about electrolytes is that they're able to grab on to unnecessary waste in your body, and they're able to excrete it. So most people get sick just because they don't sweat during the winter time. So that's a good way to combat it, as far as, like, you know, what you can put out. Now, what you can put in is just as important, and I think it gets overlooked a lot. The reason why I decided to touch on this last is that, you know, this has a lot less to do with the winter and more to do with personal development. I mean, you could do this 12 months out of the year and it's going to have a positive effect on your body. So let's look at it. So for me, what I'm putting in, obviously you have to stay positive. Even in the cold weather, it's really easy to get negative and, you know, look down on yourself, especially when you're not feeling as good. I mean, anybody can be at the top of their game when they feel great. I think the biggest challenge that us humans have is feeling great even when we don't feel so great, or performing well even when we're not feeling so well. So a great way to do that is with diet. Primarily I follow what's called a plant-based diet. So I don't eat anything that comes from a nervous system. No meat, no dairy, no eggs, no honey, no gelatin. Strictly plants. The same way in which I only breathe plants. I don't need the air from a buffalo or a cow or a chicken, although I do like those things. I like to play with pets every now and then on my spare time. But the most important thing for me is my diet in terms of what I'm putting in, because what do most people do during the holidays? I mean, you got to start with Halloween, right? That's how they get the little kids. You're talking about eating a ton of candy all at once, which for me, that was always a huge tradition growing up in my family. Which that's just not good for you. That's just gonna get you sick. Even if it is vegan, that's still a pretty unhealthy lifestyle choice to eat a lot of sugar like that. And then you got Thanksgiving coming up. And what's going on with Thanksgiving is you're eating a ton of food that puts you practically into a coma. That's why they call it like a food coma, because what's going on is the blood from the rest of your body has to rush to your stomach to help digest all that food that you ate from overeating. And then, you know, you got Christmas, which also opens up a whole array of food choices that people seem to partake in. And then New Year's usually is involved with quite a bit of drinking. I mean, the holidays in general, people tend to consume quite a larger amount of alcohol than normal. And so your body has to adjust to all that. Now, the cool thing about that is most people, they're healthy enough to where they can adjust to that naturally, where they don't need to do all these extra things. But the problem is they do it during the winter when it gets cold. And so not only are you bringing in more waste than normal, you are also adjusting to this radical shift in your environment. And some people just don't know how to deal with that. So my two biggest focuses for the winter are going to be, what are you putting in and what are you putting out? If you're putting in good stuff and you're putting out good stuff, you should do just fine. I don't get sick during the winter whatsoever. And I don't say that to brag, I say that to show you that there is a strategy that you can develop so that way you can deliver the same results in your life. But the most important thing, you're gonna need to sweat, you're gonna need to get fresh air, right? So those are the two keys. The third key is going to be that you're gonna wanna minimize the amount of acidic foods that you ingest into your diet, whether it's alcohol, large amounts of sugar and animal products, and so on. So hopefully that helps. Something about walking around the rose garden, it's just so mesmerizing. Like it's pretty cool through here if you actually look at it. It's almost like a trail that they built here upon grass. I enjoy it quite a bit because, you know, if I wasn't able to get the fresh air with all the trees, I definitely would start to develop some of that sickness. These days, I feel like plants is the only thing that really keeps me sane. Look at that. You just have rows upon rows of it. So what are we going to be doing today? Well, today I want to take you guys into the journey in my mind. And the biggest thing that I like to do is I like to get out and come to a nice park like this. If you don't have a park that you can go to, any type of nature will really do to help combat the sickness. Now, if you can't afford like a gym membership to sweat, like to hit the sauna or to do yoga or anything like that, you could always get a new job that requires labor, that demands you to sweat. Just a couple ideas. I don't really know how to help poor people in this situation. It goes beyond the extent of my knowledge, but you know, in times of poverty, you know, it's in times where there is a lack of resources, it is so important to develop such a strong sense of resourcefulness, because that's really going to set the foundation for the rest of your life. So I'm going to head to the food co-op right now, and I'm going to show you guys exactly what I like to put in on a consistent basis to help me feel great. All right, so now we're heading into the food co-op. And for those of you that don't know what a food co-op is, basically it's a grocery store that's owned by the local residents in the neighborhood. So pretty cool because you get a wide range of stuff, and then at the same time you get really good prices on it. So if you haven't heard of it yet, the main drink that I like to focus on besides water is going to be kombucha, especially on a plant-based diet, because kombucha has vitamin B12, and it's good stuff. You know, one thing's for sure, as the winter comes around, you know, there's two types of people. There's two types of people. People that let the day run them, and people that run the day. And you know, it's not always so easy to run every day and have complete control, but this stuff definitely helps. Literally tastes just like alcohol, but it's good for you. You definitely need it too, especially when the winter comes around. All right, so we've just left the co-op, and one thing I forgot to show you guys, I don't know if you even know that this existed, but this is vegan beef jerky, or vegan jerky, and I love it because a little inside secret about me to my loyal fans is that, you know, growing up, I would eat a pack of Jack Link's teriyaki every day. I mean, literally, I don't think there was like a moment that went by where I wasn't craving that snack. And, you know, transitioning to a plant-based diet, that was pretty tough, but I'm very grateful that I live in a city where we have options. You know, if there's one thing that I could address that I've done in this video today that might be slightly controversial, is the whole germ thing. And while I do believe that bacteria plays a huge role in how we feel and our level of health, it's not the ultimately deciding factor. The ultimately deciding factor is what you do as a person. There are plenty of cultures from all around the world, you know, from Fijian to, you know, mostly Pacific Islanders, people that live a more natural lifestyle, where there are no recorded cases of sickness, or if they do get sick, it's incredibly minimal. So the first belief that we have to establish if you want to conquer the winter is that you do have control. You have control over the way that you feel. You have control over how your body reacts to the environment. And you've got control even when you're starting to hit a low and you're starting to feel that sickness come down upon you. I can assure you, though, it's not just some bug or some virus, which is what we've been taught in American culture. The biggest issue with that is, I mean, it makes sense for American culture because it's profitable. I mean, you know, if you think that you have a disease that you could go cure with like some vaccine or buying some pill, that's profitable because companies profit off of it. It's a lot less profitable if you can do it naturally from what's already been given to you for free, such as the trees, the air, the land. You know, good clean water, positive, stimulating, and enrich learning environments. Let's look at the traffic go by. I don't know if you guys can feel that, but it's almost like serenading in the way that it moves. But the biggest point of this video today is to show you that you do have control over what goes on in your current circumstances, especially with the winter. The winter just happens to be the most difficult because it gets freezing. And I'm incredibly grateful to be from a part of the world where the weather doesn't affect me too much. But regardless of your life situation or your circumstances, you can find light at the end of the tunnel. And so, I forgot to hit this thing. So, that's gonna be my biggest advice, is don't fall for the trap or the propaganda, except that you do have control and that you can make yourself feel great. Because, you know, there's a huge amount of rewards on the other side if you can overcome this small deficit. I mean, if you can figure out how to bump your level of health up and not get sick during the winter, you're gonna be far more productive. And it's not about what you can do in the strongest times of your life, which for most people would be during the summer. It's about what you can do at the most difficult points in your life, when it is the coldest outside and it's hard to go for that walk or it's hard to go for that jog. That's really what separates humans and makes the difference in the long run. So if you can get out there and get active, find ways to sweat, you know, really harness your resourcefulness in a time of scarce resources, I can assure you, you'll be just fine this winter. I know I will be. Will you? Peace, love, and prosper.